Good morning. Test 1, 2. Good morning, othering and belonging. Oh, yes, I love participation. Good morning, othering and belonging. Okay, that was at like at 6.5, but there's only like 4 of you in the room. So we're going to tell everyone outside that we are in here today. We are excited. We are engaged. We are ready to celebrate with the young people who are here from Berkeley High School and Lick Wilmerding. I see you. What up, Tigers? What up, Jackets? And also Oakland International High School. Thank you for being here with us. Welcome back to day 3 of Othering and Belonging. Get lit, get lit, get lit, get lit, get lit. Young people, if you're just joining us, I'm so glad you're here. I missed you all week long. You are free to engage with us. If you like something or love something, you can yell back at it, say, yeah, I like that. L'chaim, whatever it is that moves you, say that into this space. Let it have life. Let it have power. Let it be so. Yes? Yeah. All right. All right. To the 2 people up front, thank you for responding back. I appreciate you. My name is Chinaka Hodge. I'm your host, your MC for day 3. And we're going to move right into it. We want to remind you that we're playing Othering and Belonging Bingo. Is anybody else playing bingo? There's a form you can get out at the registration table. It helps you key in and cue into the things that are going on stage in a fun and engaging way. Plus, kids are here. Young people are here. Let's play some bingo, guys. I don't know what the prize is, but it's probably something like useful, meaningful, lasting. I have notes to share with you. I get to introduce you to Aswat Ensemble. Aswat is the Bay Area's premier Arab music ensemble. We can clap right out the gates for that. True to Zawiya's commitment to pluralism and inclusion, Aswat is multiracial, multi-ethnic, and reaches out to the diverse Bay Area community with folkloric, classical, contemporary, and sacred Arab music. Aswat's doors remain open to all who want to participate in the exciting, enriching exchange between Arab Americans and other communities through the universal language of music. I want y'all to get juiced and give them the warm welcome because they're family just like you are. Othering and belonging, get juiced for Aswat.
Hello, everyone. We're very happy to be here with you this morning. We will start with a short ibtihal to honor the victims of New Zealand.
إلهي يكن ذنبي عظيما فعفوك يا إله الكون أعظم إلهي إن يكن ذنبي عظيما فعفوك يا إله الكون أعظم فممن أرتجي مولاي عطفا فممن أرتجي مولاي عطفا وفضلك واسع للكل مغنم تركت الناس كلهم ورائي وجئت إليك كي بالقلب القرب أنام.
عصفور طل من الشباك واللي يا نونو خبيني عنك خبيني دخلك يا نونو خبيني عندك خبيني دخلك يا نونو قلتله انت من وين قالي من حدود السماء قلتله جاي من وين قالي من بيت الجيران قلتله خايف من مين قالي من قفص هربان قلتله ريشاتك وين قالي فرفضها الزمان عصفور طل من الشباك واللي يا نونو خبيني عندك خبيني دخلك يا نونو خبيني عندك خبيني دخلك يا نونو ونزلت عخده دمعة وجناحاته مثكين وتهدى بالأرض وقال بدي يمشي وما في ونزلت عخده دمعة وجناحاته مثكين وتهدى بالأرض وقال بدي امشي وما في وضميته عقلبي وصار يتوجع على جروحاته ضميته عقلبي وصار يتوجع على جروحاته قبل ما يكسر الحبس تكسر صوته وجناحاته قلتله لا تخاف تطلع شوف الشمس اللي رح تطلع وتطلع عالغابة وشاف أمواج الحرية بتلمع قلتله لا تخاف تطلع شوف الشمس اللي رح تطلع وتطلع عالغابة وشاف أمواج الحرية بتلمع وشاف جوانح عم تزقزق من خلف بواب العلي شاف جوانح عم تزقزق من خلف بواب العلي شاف الغابة عم تحلل على جوانح الحرية قلتله انت من وين قالي من حدود السماء قلتله جاي من وين قالي من بيت الجيران قلتله خايف من مين قالي من قفص هربان قلتله ريشاتك وين قالي فرفضها الزمان عصفور طل من الشباك واللي يا نونو خبيني عندك خبيني دخلك يا نونو خبيني عندك خبيني دخلك يا نونو.
Home by Worcestershire. No one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark. You only run for the border when you see your whole city running as well, your neighbors running faster than you, breath bloody in their throats, and the boy you went to school with who kissed you dizzy behind the old tin factory is carrying a gun bigger than his body. No one leaves home unless home won't let you stay. No one leaves home until home chases you, fire underfoot, hot blood in your belly. It's not something you ever thought of doing until the blade burnt threats into your neck, and even then you carried the anthem under your breath, only tearing up your passport in an airport toilet, sobbing as each mouthful of paper made it clear you would not be coming back. You have to understand that no one puts their children in a boat unless the water is safer than the land. No one burns their palms under trains beneath carriages. No one spends days and nights in the belly of a truck feeding on newspaper unless the miles traveled means something more than journey. No one wants to be beaten, pitied. No one chooses refugee camps or strip searches where your body is left aching, or prison, because prison is safer than a city of fire, and one prison guard in the night is better than a truckload of men who look like your father. No one could take it. No one could stomach it. No one's skin would be tough enough. The go-home black, sturdy immigrants, refugees, asylum seekers, sucking our country dry, niggers with their hands out, they smell strange, savages, messed up their country, and now they want to mess up ours. How do the words, the dirty looks roll off your back? Maybe because the blow is softer than a limb torn off, or the words are more tender than 14 men between your legs, or the insults are easier to swallow than rubble, than bone, than your child's body in pieces. I want to go home. But home is the mouth of a shark. Home is the barrel of a gun, and no one would leave home unless home told you to quicken your legs. Leave your clothes behind, crawl through the desert, wade through the ocean, drown, save, be hungry, beg, forget pride. Your survival is more important. No one leaves home unless home is a sweaty voice in your ear saying, leave. Run away from me now. I don't know what I've become, but I know anywhere is safer than here.
المشرق بتدفي شمس المغرب والعاني وانا ما بعرف من الشمس إلا شمس الأغاني ما بعرف شمس فلسطين ولا شروق الشمس بيافا قاعد برسم صورة شمس وجرب هزها من كتافها وعيها وإلا شمسي 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 لاجئ سموني لاجئ طالع نازل عالملاجئ عالخريطة بلادي رسمي ما بعرفها بقرا عليها أحرف اسمي الله 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 عالبير وعلى أم الفحم الله الله يبارك أهلي وناسي بحيفا وببيت لحم واللي غنوا قبلي واللي غنوا بعدي كلن عاشوا مثلي عاشوا حق العودة بحلم بالعودة عبلادي بدك عالبيارات بحلم بالعودة عبلادي بحلم افلت خيطان الطيارات كتير علي يكون بغرفة كتير فيها شباك فيها شرفة وعصافير يا خضر الأخضر دبرنا دبرنا يا مار الياس، نحن اللي عالحق كبرنا 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 قدس الأقدس. يا خضر الأخضر دبرنا دبرنا يا مار الياس، نحن اللي عالحق كبرنا 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 قدس الأقدس. الله 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 رام الله عالبير وعلى ام الفحم. الله الله يبارك اهلي وناسي بحيفا وببيت لحم. وين عرم الله وين عرم الله وانت يا مسافر وين عرم الله وين عرم الله وين عرم الله وانت يا مسافر وين عرم الله. منتصب القامة أمشي مرفوع الهامة أمشي، منتصب القامة أمشي مرفوع الهامة أمشي، في كفي كسبة زيتون وعلى كتفي نعشي، وأنا أمشي وأنا أمشي وأنا أمشي وأنا أمشي. قلبي قمر أحمر قلبي بستان، فيه العسل فيه ريحان. قلبي قمر أحمر قلبي بستان، فيه العسل فيه الريحان. شفتاي سماع تمطر نارا حين حبا عيان، شفتاي سماع تمطر نارا حين حبا عيان. في كفي قصفة زيتون وعلى كتفي نعشي، وانا امشي وانا امشي وانا امشي وانا امشي. منتصب القمر امشي مرفوع الهامد امشي، منتصب القمر امشي مرفوع الهامد امشي. في كفي كسفة زيتون وعلى كتفي نعشي، وانا امشي وانا امشي وانا امشي وانا امشي.
Once more for Aswad. Once more for Aswad. We had Loai on tabla, Monica on tambourine, Jalal on quantum, George on oud, Basma on violin and direction, Salah singer, Cyril singer, Safa and Rania duet, Frank a singer, and Iman our beautiful poet who shared a poem by Worcestershire. Please one more time. Thank you, Aswad. I feel all the way turned up to like 100 fulfillion. High school students, would you say you're at a 100 fulfillion? Whoa. High school students, are you here? All right, I have to do this the appropriate way. Lick Wilmerding High School, are you here? Berkeley High School, are you here? Wow. We're gonna come back to my alma mater in a moment. We had a teacher from Lick Widening shouting for Berkeley High. I appreciate that. And Oakland International High School, you here with us? Thank you for being here. Thank you for being excited. Everyone who just experienced a SWAT, did you feel that? I want to remind you that it is okay to feel. You are encouraged to feel all day and to share your emotions with others, to radiate the joy you just felt from a SWAT through all of your sessions today, to bring that intention and that love and that joy into all you do, not just today, but every day. Just reminding you that that's okay. Yes? Good. Yes. Oh, please do not let me forget Urban High School. Urban, are you here with me? Y'all know y'all are my favorites, kind of low-key, just playing. I love you all. I teach with you all. Thank you all for being here. We're going to transition to our next moment, which is a conversation about bridging the divide in leadership between generations. And I'm so excited to frame this for you and to introduce the people. Obviously, we're turning over the stage a little bit so I can have some time to do some housekeeping. We want to remind you that there's an amazing curriculum that's been brought by folks who prepared it lovingly and caringly, and there's a wall out there where you can engage with it. We're going to talk about it a little later in the day as well. We want to remind you that we're playing Othering and Belonging Bingo, and there's a bingo sheet out in the lobby, and you can figure out all the ways you can interact with new people, organizations, and movements just by playing bingo. I love that. It's a fun way to engage. I also want to remind you to hydrate all day long. Water is important and key for movement building. Just because we're sitting in a room in the dark and we're asking a lot of you emotionally. So we're just going to keep asking you to feed yourselves and give yourselves what you need. Yes? Yeah. Wonderful. Are we ready to move to the next bit? So I get to introduce you to three amazing leaders, all who do amazing work within, information just popped up on my phone as I'm looking for it. This is a conversation on bridging dialogue with Native American leader Casey Camp-Hornick and two members of the International Indigenous Youth Council, Aaron Wise and Tomas Lopez. Yes, you can clap for them if you know them already. I asked Mama Casey backstage what I should say about her, and she said, you should say that I am a matriarch, I am a survivor, I am a woman, and I am from the Ponca Nation. Casey Camp-Hornick, councilwoman and hereditary drumkeeper of the Women's Scalp Dance Society of the Ponca Nation of Oklahoma, is a longtime activist, environmentalist, actress, and published author. First taking up the cause of Native and human rights in the early 70s, it has been in the last 15 years that she began her plea for environmental justice for her Ponca people and people around the globe. Calling it the Toxic Tour, Casey has identified and diligently worked to remediate and bring attention to the corridor of toxic environmental industry surrounding the historic lands of the Ponca people. Because of Casey's work, the nation is the first tribe in the state of Oklahoma to adopt the Rights of Nature statute and to pass a moratorium on fracking on tribal lands. Casey was also instrumental in the drafting and adoption of the first ever International Indigenous Women's Treaty protecting the rights of nature. Casey travels the globe bringing awareness, speaking multiple times at the UN Forum on Indigenous Issues. She's also a board member of We Can and Movement Rights and continues to lend her support to grassroots environmental organizations and budding activists across the world. Please clap it up for Casey, who will join the stage soon. Tomas Tonatio Lopez Jr. spent months working with the International Indigenous Youth Council at Standing Rock to stop construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline. Yes, affirm that. Tomas continues his work in the Indigenous and LGBTQ+ communities to inspire young leaders and create sustainable change. Tomas continues his work with the IIYC as an active board member and adult member in Denver, Colorado. Tomas spoke in Washington, D.C. to accept the RFK Human Rights Award in 2018. Aaron Wise is a proud member of the Jicarilla Apache Nation and Pueblo of Laguna. She is the Communications and Digital Director at Seeding Sovereignty and is a mentor to the International Indigenous Youth Council, a collective comprised of young movement leaders from across Turtle Island who helped to lead the indigenous occupation of treaty territories and waterways in Standing Rock against the Dakota Access Pipeline. Ensuring a future for generations to come is a duty and responsibility to her, and she focuses the traditional teachings of her predecessors on the intersectional challenges faced by the youth and organizers she works to build community with. She aims to do all her work in homage to her ancestors whose resistance ensured her existence. She is a human being just like you. Please, warm welcome to Tomas, Grandma Casey, and my good friend Aaron. Light it up, y'all.
Widaha, eh. Datia, Jiji with the K, Panka, the Mashte Panka, Oklahoma. Inaha, Gaha, Diga, Shinga, Ede. Greetings. My Ponca name is Judy. Casey Camp Hornick is my colonized name. I come from the occupied territory of Oklahoma, which is the original home of 3 different tribes and the home where reservations were made and POW camps, called those reservations, contain 36 other tribes that are part of a forced removal. My grandpa was 8 years old on the forced removal from Nebraska, where he walked 650 miles, where a third of my people died. And we now call home, because our Mother the Earth has taught us that wherever we are is sacred. So I'm grateful to share this sacred day with you. The sun rose today and gave us this day to make as we choose. Thank you for choosing to be here with us. The water flowed today and gave us this way of life that we all protect here, my grandchildren. Understand the sacredness of water. I listened to a beautiful woman yesterday speak of the sacred breath that we all share. I think of the things that grew back there in the back room. They were once grain. They were once on trees. They once were roots with their feet firmly in our Mother Earth that we all shared. And I'm grateful on this day that not only do we have those things to ingest that make the cells of the very bodies that are the robes we wear over our spirits, but that we share these things, and those who have shared with us and come before us. We're also wearing them. We're wearing the energy of our ancestors in our DNA. Isn't that amazing? We're carrying the future within ourselves and sharing that on these days that we've been brought together for the Otherings and Belongings Conference. Because today is the beginning of all of that future that we're going to be making, that we're going to be creating. So in our traditional way, we come to you with a prayer in our hearts from the beginning of time and to the end as well, wherever that might be. And the reasons that we are sustained is this sacred water of life. Niaka nita'azi. Water contains all life. Life is contained within the water. We come here because people call us activists, when in truth, we are just survivors of a genocidal process that hasn't worked because the Creator saw to it, Mother Earth saw to it, that we survive. I want to say thank you to the Ohlone people that grace us with allowing all of us to be here in the sacred territory that the Creator put them, who blessed us on that very first morning with permission to continue. So thank you to them. It's easy to have a conversation with you. Appreciate you. At this time, I want to offer a song, which is our way to begin all things. And this song came one time after we were all together at Standing Rock. Yeah, my sons, Mikasi and Haduma. had gone up there from our Sundance. And that was October 8th of 2016, before we were all brutalized and arrested. And I had asked the water, how can I honor you? And she offered me a song. And so I want to offer that song to you all. I want it to flow inside you. I want you to carry it with you because it doesn't belong to me. It belongs to her, the sacred water of life. And she wants us to share all these things. Boy. Woman is the carrier of water. She's the first atmosphere, this water is, that human life exists in when the egg and the sperm come together to make life. And this water is where our bodies were created. That water that has the same pH level and the same saline as the sacred oceans of life. Niakanitauzi wibdahamambli, wibdahamambli, wibdahamambli. Niakanitauzi wibdahamambli, wibdahamambli. Niakanitauzi wibdahamambli, wibdahamambli, wibdahamambli. Niakanitauzi wibdahamambli. Niakanitauzi wibdahamambli, wibdahamambli, wibdahamambli. Niakanitauzi wibdahamambli. Niakanitauzi wibdahamambli, wibdahamambli, wibdahamambli. Niakanitauzi wibdahamambli. Chang.
Okay, good morning, everyone. How are you feeling? Amazing. That's really great. I love that one. We saw so many bright and shiny faces over the last few days, and we're really grateful to be here with you all. My name is Erin Wise. I am a youth mentor for the International Indigenous Youth Council, and I'm also a communications director for Seeding Sovereignty. I'm Hickory Apache in Laguna Pueblo, and I come here on behalf of my people as a guest to Grandma Casey and, of course, the Ohlone territory that is here.
Yaat ebene, Tlazo Kamali, Ometeo. Buenos días. Ihani Washte. My name is Tomas Donatiu Lopez Jr. My grandfather is Chief of Chiefs Leonard Crodog Sr. My mother is Waterwoman Sharon Dominguez, and my father is Sundance Chief Tomas Lopez Sr. I am Mexica, Otomi, Dine, Apache, and Hunkapi Lakota, Chichangu, from Rosebud, South Dakota, is where my family comes from. I am an adult mentor for the International Indigenous Youth Council, and I'm also the Director of Communications for the council as well. I'm very honored to be here today, and I'm very honored to sit next to my grandmother today and my sister Erin to share our story and talk about some really important things that need to be talked about and share our story. Some of these stories have never been heard before, and so I'm really excited to sit here before you. And sorry about that. It's the spirits. Those darn spirits.
Watch out.
I know.
And
But yeah, so we're here today because we want to talk about something really important that really helped us, the International Indigenous Youth Council, and has helped the movement in general move to a place that has been really successful, and that's intergenerational activism and intergenerationalism, and how we can include every generation in everything that we do. I'm going to actually let my grandma take it from here, because I feel like if there's anywhere to start, you have to start at the beginning. So, Grandma, please.
Yeah, I'm not that old, son.
Oh, Sky Woman?
He's smart. He knows to start with Grandma. I also want to congratulate these youth. I think the last time we were together was Sundance, but the time before that was on June 4th of this last year, when I was with these young people, when they were one of the 4 groups selected to receive the RFK Award in Washington, D.C. Yeah. That was heavy, huh?
Whew, yeah.
In every way.
Not quite as many people as there are here today, but you know.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. I also want to recognize on this day the reason that I'm wearing red, and I asked Kim to wear red. She didn't bring red with her, so we got to read it into the blend of colors, is for the missing and murdered Indigenous women. In this community, in the last few days, last few weeks, there's been a lot of information put out there about a beautiful young woman named Jessica Rhodes that is making her journey to the spirit world and leaving behind her children and her family as a result of domestic violence. So we want to honor all those names that are not spoken. Her name is Jessica Rhodes.
Jessica Rose.
Jessica Rose.
Say her name when you think of all of us, because she stands for so many. Now, when we talk about intergenerational communication and activism, we also have to talk about intergenerational trauma. When I spoke to you earlier about my grandfather being on the forced removal at the age of 8, then we should also speak of his parents and grandparents and his descendants and my grandmas that were also on that walk. Because during that walk, many things happened. My people were forced to leave behind, and we're just one story of hundreds of nations, of 100 million indigenous people of North America that were killed in the genocidal process to steal the very land that the Creator put us on in order to enrich themselves. That intergenerational trauma includes the stories from that time where those wagons of the cavalry came through our camp after we had made 5 treaties with the United States that are supposed to be the supreme law of the land, and they were all broken, in order to continue to cede hundreds of millions of acres and to maintain a small territory in northern Nebraska and what is now South Dakota. When it wasn't enough to get through the 1868 treaty and get in access to the gold in the Black Hills and the railroads across the territory, they gathered up my people, and we had to leave behind our hunting, our fishing, our farming equipment, our seeds, and our homes, and go at bayonet and guns behind us. And they said that these people came through, these soldiers came through our little village there, and they grabbed our babies, our children, by their braids and flung them into the wagons. And we knew that we had to go too, or they would kill them, because we had already been reduced down to 550 from the smallpox blankets that they'd given us along the Missouri River, Nishude, that goes through Standing Rock. That's why we were there, to defend. That's our territory. That's where Creator wanted us to protect. When they gathered up our children and flung them into the wagons, and the women cried, and the men were helpless because their weapons had been taken and they were bound. Then they separated off the young women for use by the soldiers at night. And they herded us down to what is now present-day Oklahoma. It was called Indian Territory at that time. And they imprisoned us on what was called a reservation, but if you left the boundaries, you were killed. It was that simple. And then they kidnapped my mama and her generation into boarding schools that were taken hundreds of miles away. Their hair was cut. They were given this language instead of our original language. They were told that their religion was inferior to Christianity and that they must accept this different way of life or they would die. And they were severely beaten and traumatized, being away from their families 9 months out of the year. And when they came home, they were different than their parents. And they wonder why we have social ills on our reservations. Those are only just glossing the top of this. But my mama was strong. My daddy was strong. They kept our language. They imbued in us what my mother said that could never be taken away, and that's our spirit. That's our way of understanding. They could cut our hair. And in doing so, descending from the women who were the survivors of the rapes and the murders, the men who were the war chiefs, my brother Carter Camp then became involved in the American Indian movement in the early 70s. My mom was very strong in that as well. And we began to rebuild ourselves from the urban places that they put us in other relocations through all the policies that I won't enumerate because they're still happening to us. And we became the warriors of the plains, the warriors of Turtle Islands, in every single way that we could be in a peaceful, prayerful manner, because the Creator told us that was the way to go. We reclaimed our religion. We reclaimed our dress. We reclaimed our songs. We changed the policies of the United States. And in reclaiming our religion, we began to Sundance again. That's still outlawed in Oklahoma, by the way. You could still get arrested for there. And we went back to our traditional territory at the guidance of Leonard Crow Dog, who had become brothers with my brothers in Wounded Knee, South Dakota in 1973 during that occupation. My brothers were there. My brother Carter Camp was the only leader to serve 2 years in Leavenworth prison time for participating in that. That's where I met your mom and dad, is at Crow Dogs. Yeah?
Yep.
And that began that. Intergenerationally. We now at that Sundance have from my mama and her sister to me and my brothers to my 4 children and to their children, 5 generations that participate up there every year. That's intergenerational healing. Because not only are we the experiencers of intergenerational trauma, we are also our own healers. Yeah. So from there.
Yeah, thank you so much. I apologize for my nerves, and thank you for bringing me back, Grandma. When people ask me where my story about Standing Rock began and like how I became an activist, I'm like, yeah, it all started in 1973. And they look at me and they're like, but it's so real. Like, my parents, they were beginning to get involved in the Chicano movement with Corky Gonzalez in Denver, Colorado. And for those of you who know Corky, he was a very militant man, and he was an amazing person for our community. I'm really happy to call him my uncle, you know, my grandpa. And he was teaching my mom and dad who were attending La Escuela Tlatelolco. And they were, there was this new school and there was this new thing where they were going to teach you all of these really cool things. And they got all of these young people together. And at the time, my mom was about 13 or 14. And they told her, we're going to go up and take supplies to Wounded Knee. You know, it's a bunch of Indians and they need our help. They've asked for our help, so we're going to go up there. So will you young people take these supplies up there? And it was the 70s, 13-year-olds, you didn't need a driver's license. They just jumped in the car and took it. And they get up there, and years later, my mom comes to find out that they were actually transporting more than just, food and bread. And so, but, they just didn't tell these young people the idea of kind of using your youth to get by certain things and help the movement. And so that started my parents' life on this path of community leadership. And so growing up, I went to all of the marches, I went to all of the rallies, we did the strikes, and I always saw my parents doing these things. But not only did I see my parents actively working in the community, I saw my parents really offering and making sure that I got to live a very traditional life at home. I say that I have dual citizenship because I get to walk in one world and then completely jump into the next without ever being seen, and no one even realizes that we do it. And it's something really unique to Indigenous peoples. The Indigenous peoples that have to kind of balance these two worlds, balance these two things. And it's really interesting because that is what made me go to Standing Rock. I heard about this group, the One Mind Youth Movement, OMYM, that there was a group of young people from North Dakota and South Dakota from the reservations that came together and wanted to protect the water, and they were running all the way to Washington, D.C. And it really made me think, okay, I just graduated from college. I can't find this magical, amazing job and career that everyone promised me. And what am I really doing? I was working at American Apparel selling people things that they didn't need. And I didn't feel like I was feeding my spirit, feeding my soul. And so I told my father, we have an obligation to our people, to this land, as caretakers of this land. And as third generation, fourth generation warrior. My grandfather was a paratrooper in World War II and 82nd Airborne. My father was an 82nd Airborne paratrooper in Vietnam. I come from a long line of Eagle warriors, and I'm really honored of that. And I felt that we had an obligation to this water, to this earth, to our people, to our missing and murdered Indigenous peoples, to show up and to defend. And so that's where I was introduced to the International Indigenous Youth Council. And that's where I met my sister Erin. And we found out that our entire lives, the only things that separated us was a mountain. And growing up, I didn't know anything about my Apache side. All I knew is that my grandfather was, his father was Apache, and in order to survive, you could either be Apache or you could be American. And his mother died, they adopted him, and they gave him the name Lopez, which is where that comes from. So I never knew anything about my Apache side, but I always knew that I was Apache. And I finally met my Apache sister. And for the first time in 2017, she took me to a ceremony called Gojia, which is a fall harvest ceremony where the Hickory Apache people do this amazing relay race, and it's against two clans. And I'm really honored because this movement has brought me so close to thousands of Indigenous young people that I knew existed, but I never got to see. I never got to feel and touch and see that they really were there. And this opportunity, it opened that to me, and it realized the power of our people, of this web that we've created. So I'm gonna pass this to my sister, Erin, now, and let her tell her story and where you come from, because your grandmothers are warriors in themselves, and they deserve to be mentioned here as well.
Yeah, real quickly, I just want to call in my grandmas, Iola Begay, Miriam Kachucha, Vicky Minarco, Betsy Wise. Those were the women that laid my foundation, right? There were a lot of queer folks, a lot of brown folks, a lot of black folks, a lot of trans folks, a lot of white folks in between, and they lifted me up to be who I am today. And when I heard about Standing Rock, and I'll go through this real fast, my grandma, she had passed away 2 years prior, the grandmother that raised me, and I was desperately sad. Depression, right? As we were talking about at the beginning of the session, that is an illness that people suffer from. That is an ail, and I have that. I want to honor that is a part of who I am, and I was very, very sad. And my little brothers and sisters, we were all really sad because we missed our grandma. And I heard about these kids that were running, and I got a call from my auntie, and she said, these kids, they're not really doing anything. Everybody's kind of depressed. They're just sitting around. They're not really showing up. How can we motivate them, right? You're the big sister. You're supposed to motivate them. So I hear about these youth that are running across the country to Washington, D.C., and I tell my little brother and sister, okay, I know we're all sad, but there are kids that are literally on foot running across the country to stop a pipeline. Okay. So the next morning, I get a call from my auntie, and she's like, I don't know what you did, but they packed a car in the middle of the night, and they're driving to South Dakota, and it's your fault, and you need to go follow them. Right? So I'm not mad about this, but then I think about my grandma when she was alive. She was also, so think about this, it's right, there's 3 generations that are represented in this movement, and we got to be a part of it. And we didn't even know we were all in it together. So when Grandma Casey and her brothers were in Wounded Knee, Tomas's family was in Wounded Knee. My grandma was in South Dakota, not that far away, and she was a teacher on the reservation in Wounded Knee, in Kyle, Little Wound, is where she was teaching. And she said, if you ever want to know how much the United States government hates indigenous peoples, just look at the Dakotas and see how they reduced the nations that defeated them. Okay? If you ever want to see how much they hate them, look at the people that fought back, right? And you can still see that reflected today, right? Any community that fights back, you see that they become a sacrifice zone. Any person that speaks out, we're seeing activists drop left and right? Not just our people, but Black Lives Matter activists. We're seeing other community members that are disappearing, and we don't know why. We know why. The work we're doing is powerful. So I get to Standing Rock with Grandma's words echoing in the back of my brain. Can't find my little brother and sister for the first 3 days I'm there. And when they finally show up, they have 10 kids behind them, and they're like, this is our sister. She has a wallet, she has a car, and she's going to take care of all of us. And that's what happened. Right? 6 months later, I left Standing Rock. I had bronchitis. I couldn't see out of my left eye because of whatever they were spraying on us. And all I had were these incredible memories of these badass kids that took nothing from no one. Right? And they did it. They did it with such power. And they did it with such strength. And a lot of them came from places where they had never seen power and strength until they came to Standing Rock. Right, until they saw grandmas. I have this vivid memory of Grandma Casey. October 27th, it was the day they razed one of our camps completely to the ground. They kicked everybody out. They threw all of our stuff in a dumpster on the side of the road and then peed on it, right? They did these things to our people, but on the day that all these horrible things were happening, there had been a prayer circle, and Grandma had been part of the prayer circle with these other grandmothers that had been arrested. And I was driving support back and forth and also trying to track down the youth council, which was my job for 6 months. And I was trying to find the kids, and I see all the grandmothers, and they're sitting, and they're all handcuffed. And they're sitting on the prairie, and they're all in their skirts and dresses, and they have their feet out like this. And I don't know what Grandma Casey was saying to all of them, but they were roaring with laughter. And they're just 50 grandmas on the ground, handcuffed, 45-degree weather, just sitting there roaring with laughter. And I don't, and having that moment of clarity that these women have been doing this for decades. They're handcuffed. How many times have they been handcuffed? They're being beaten by police. How many times have they been beaten by police? So I guess with that in mind, in my story, I'm happy to share with more folks, but I want to ask Grandma Casey, right now, I feel as a young person, and you know my age, so I don't need to say it out loud. My birthday's next week. I want to ask, I feel sad. I feel like every time we get 10 steps ahead, somebody grabs us and yanks us back 100 yards. And I want to know, like, on the days when we feel like we're watching people our age disappear because of the work that they're doing, what did y'all do when you were our age, when you wanted so desperately to see us in this moment right now, to see, you know, our generation, to see people like Tomas and I and the youth council and all the youth from your community and everybody here, you know, how do you pull yourself up by your moccasins, you know, and keep going?
Well, I'm going to back up a bit again to our story at Standing Rock, because we were at Sundance, which is our sacred ceremony, on August the 8th of 2016, and Emcee and Jeff, my sons, and the rest of us were caravanning home. My children are powerful activists as well as my grandchildren. We had 3 generations in Standing Rock. And as we were going home, these magical things called cell phones, you know, we used to deal with smoke signals, so like, life is pretty dang easy for you guys. And seriously, I mean, we used to have to sit down and look at each other face to face and make a plan, you know? But he got one of those little things on his phone that went boing, and it was an alert from Joy Braun, a Cheyenne River Lakota woman who was on the ground there at Standing Rock. And she put out a call for warriors. Now, warriors in our society, as these young folks know, is not that stereotypical one that John Wayne can kill 8 of with a 6-gun, you know. But it's you, and it's me, and it's our children, and it's the elders who will make a stand for what is correct. That's a warrior. That's a warrior being guided. Yeah. And so when the warriors were called to Standing Rock, they turned around to protect that sacred water for the 8 million people downstream who didn't seem to pay attention to what was going on. But these people knew what was correct. There was only 37 there. So when my sons got up there, they understood, because of their generations, how we have to do things. They made a relationship with the sheriff there to say, look, we're not up here to fight you guys. We're up here to save your children. And so we're going to tell you right now that we have how many arrestables? Yeah. We have 16 arrestables. And because they were capable of being bailed out, they had X amount of money. Again, those little magical things that say PayPal or something, yeah. And they began a series of arrests then that was sanctioned by the law at that time, saying, we're going to go peacefully with you in protest. And they used, again, those little magical instruments to film this and put it out there on YouTube to show what was going on there. So I don't think it's a matter of understanding, because you see what that went from those 30 people to the 3,000 of us in those camps that were just constantly changing. And everybody, as my son Emcee said, Standing Rock is in your backyard right now. And if we choose to honor the manner in which we've been taught, that it took 7 generations of prayer and strength to allow us to be here on this day, to share this sacred moment with all of these relatives, because we are all related, then we have to understand that we too are responsible for the 7 generations to come. And so there is no quitting. A warrior can exist in all worlds. It doesn't matter where it is or how it is expressed. As long as you're standing for what is correct and you're listening to the guidance that is given to each and every human being as part of the sacred cycle of life, and we begin to realign ourselves with the natural laws. What is power? Define that. It's not the extractive industry. It's not the elected officials. The true power is the Father's Son that rose today. We'd have no life without that. The true power is the winds that blow and cleanse the earth. That is a breath for breath with human beings that the rooted people give to us. The true power is the sacred water that flows within all things. The true power is the mother, the earth, who sustains us. And when we recognize our relationship with all that is, and we realign ourselves in spirit, then that's how we keep going. That's where we find that strength. I look at you, I find that strength. Look at me. Yeah. We got this. Yeah, we got this. Yes, so they're going to ask us to summarize. This is the cool thing about, I see you down there with your signs, yeah. I can read English, I was taught, I had to. The other thing in Indigenous world is we don't even have the word called time in our language. How good is that, right?
I'm like, there's no tea, but...
Yeah, it's like if the sun rises, it's daytime. Stars out there, night. Yeah. I'm going to offer my kids here something that they need to say to you, and then we'll close here in a moment. Promise.
I just want to say thank you all very much from the bottom of my heart, and I want to ask that all of you go back to your communities and that you put Indigenous Two-Spirit youth as one of the priorities on your list. Because although there's a lot of research and data on missing and murdered Indigenous women, oftentimes missing and murdered Indigenous trans, Two-Spirit, gay, lesbian, bisexual, non-binary, and men go missing as well, then a lot of these are direct results of the oil industry. And so I ask that you put the Indigenous youth that you may see struggling in your classrooms, in your businesses, people that never get a voice, that are walking with their head down, a chance to say something, because you will free them in ways that you never knew you could free somebody. Give them that power back. And remember, at the end of the day, every single one of you is Indigenous to somewhere, and you walk with thousands of ancestors behind you all at once. Aho mitakuye oyasin.
I think the last thing I want to say is thank you to all of you for coming here today. Thank you for allowing us to share space with you. Thank you to the elders that are in the audience that have given us the space to speak. Thank you to Grandma for allowing us to speak alongside you. We love her. I fangirled the first time I met her, right? She's in this film called Barking Water by Sterling Harjo, and if you haven't watched it, you should, and then weep and think of me. But I want to say thank you, because the grandmothers are the reason that I'm here, right? All the people that preceded us, all the ancestors, all the transcestors, everybody that came before us, right? They're the folks that taught us how to be. Our ways of knowing come from them, and all the spirits and the beings that are here with us, all the relatives, the non-human and more than human relatives that exist around us. I want to give thanks to those, and I also want to just call on everybody. There are some dams here. I don't know if y'all are aware about these dams that are preventing the salmon from running. And there's a community here that is led by a woman from the Winnemem-Wintu tribe. Her name is Chief Kayleen Sisk, and she's here trying to fight for these salmon. I don't have time to talk about why it is that you need to learn about these salmon, but I would encourage y'all, if you don't know and you live here in the Bay, I would call upon you to do the work that you can do to support the lowering of those dams, because our life on the coast depends on it. I also want to say one more thing. I didn't notice any homeless folks in the area here, any houseless folks. I know they're home full and houseless, but I want to say that there's a reason for that, right? And as a place of othering and belonging, you know, this conference, it's our duty to make sure that they're in our reach, right? That they're not put away. And then that we have a way to call in the community that lives not only on the inside with access, but on the outside as well. So since we're very over time, Thank you very much for having us, and you know, please come see us. We're Native, we talk forever. It's just who we are, and we love y'all.
Yeah, and it reminds me again, we don't have the word homeless in our language either. I was looking back at things like that. There's a lot of things we can share with you. You know, Indigenous knowledge is something being brought into the United Nations level right now on how to go forward, and the rights of Indigenous people has also been enacted. This is about the sacred sites, but there's one big reminder I want everybody to really consider. This has been a fabulous gathering, and I thank you all for being here, and I thank you all for inviting us to be part of this. But just remember, human beings were invited to be part of a sacred circle of life on this Mother Earth. We are dealing with the extractive industry enacting genocide in our territory right now, in the Ponca territory. And we're fighting very hard every day just to have breath, just to have a place to grow food, just to have a place to live and fighting cancers. Human beings are this close to eliminating themselves from the sacred cycle of life and will not continue if our Mother Earth is treated in the manner in which she is treated. With a shrug of her shoulders, she can shake you off and you won't be here. And fracking causes that. The extractive industry causes that. That oil and gas is inside the earth for a purpose. Keep it in the ground. Go for the true powers of solar energy, of wind energy, of water energy, and the manner in which, and elect the correct officials to enact that if you want to continue on this. Weeb the han, hey, weeb the han.
Thank you. Woo! Try and keep it together. My relations, your relations. That was Aaron Wise, Tomas Tonatio Lopez, and my grandma Casey. Man, thank you for holding our feet to the fire. Seriously, thank you for keeping us accountable. We appreciate you and we love you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm all moved and stuff. I'm going to become an MC in a second, but right now I'm a human, and I'm tingling, and I'm sharing that with you. I thank you for being vulnerable. I thank you for being vulnerable. You know when you just be at church? Yes. Yeah, okay, you do. Sometimes you are moved, and it's okay to feel moved. So I just want to give you continued permission to feel moved and to use that in your work. There's a spiritual act just happened on this stage, and we're not always privy to them, so I'm just so grateful. We're moving into the next piece. There are cards on the tables before you so that you can ask questions of our next speaker, Manuel Pastor. We want to remind you, after he's finished, please don't leave the room. We have some special guests who are going to share something with us as well. So when he's done, keep your seats, but on the way, as he's speaking, you can write down your questions for him, and some of them will be asked on stage. Yes? Yes, I'm an auditory learner. Some of our students here are as well. Yes? Wonderful. Yeshi, how are we doing? I'm just checking in with one educator at a time. Yes? Good. Okay. Manuel Pastor is professor of sociology and American studies and ethnicity at the University of Southern California. Fight on. He currently directs the program for environmental and regional equity at USC and USC Center for the Study of Immigrant Integration. Pastor's research has generally focused on issues of economic, environmental, and social conditions facing low-income urban communities and the social movements seeking to change those realities. His current research culminated in the release of his book, State of Resistance: What California's Dizzying Descent and Remarkable Resurgence Means for America's Future. He will be doing a book signing today at 1 p.m. at the table with the booksellers. Pastor is the recipient of fellowships from Danforth, Guggenheim, Kellogg Foundations, and grants from numerous foundations such as Irvine, Ford Foundation, National Science Foundation, the MacArthur Foundation, the California Endowment, and many others. Pastor speaks frequently on economic inequality, demographic change, and community empowerment, and has published pieces in many media outlets. He holds an economics PhD from the University of Massachusetts Amherst and is the inaugural holder of the Terpanjian Chair in Civil Society and Social Change at USC, my alma mater. Fight on. One more time for Manuel Pastor. No, I said one more time for Manuel Pastor.
So really glad to be with you. I think this is going to work out perfectly. Wasn't that a great panel that we just had? So we're running a little late, but it's okay because our indigenous brothers and sisters said they had no word for time, and my word for time is hora latina. So starting a little slow. You may wonder why an economist is actually speaking to you about belonging, particularly because it's said about economists, if you took all the economists in the world and laid them end to end, they still couldn't reach a conclusion. And particularly after the financial crisis, some said that if you took all the economists in the world and laid them end to end, it would be a good thing. But it's very clear that we need to be talking about the economy because when we talk about economics, it's often being used to divide communities and operate from a space of scarcity rather than abundance. And what I want to talk to you about is how do we move from resistance to renewal? How do we practice an economics of belonging, and in particular, a sort of solidarity economics for the 21st century? I'm going to move to this pretty quickly. I always like to let people know that when I'm speaking, that while I'm talking, my voice might break or become a little bit soft. You might think that it's because I'm emotional being with a lot of great organizers. That's part of the reason. But it's also that I have a voice condition called spasmodic dysphonia, spasms around the voice box. Diane Rehm on NPR had it. Now I do. And this is literally true. It gets treated once a month with Botox because that's how we treat everything in Los Angeles. It totally works for us. So what I want us to do is to kind of think a little bit about the challenge, and I want to leave you with one central message today, and I even made a mistake myself in talking about it, but it was kind of conscious. We often talk about the economy as though it's a set of rules out there that we did not make. It is our economy. It is a set of rules that we make that either reproduce injustice or reproduce opportunity. And it is up to us to change those rules, and the first step is to claim the narrative that is our economy and not a set of rules that others make for us. So, let me say a little bit about what sets the stage for this, is to understand the ways in which America is changing. As many of you know, by the year 2043, 2044, the US will become a majority people of color nation. When people, I know I'm excited about it too. Others seem to be a little bit more fearful. They don't realize that there's Korean taco trucks in their future and what could be wrong with that. And when most people see that demographic change, they think it's actually being driven by immigration. But as many of you know, that's no longer the case. This shows you the share of foreign-born, that's the little orange rust bars at the bottom, and you could see it kind of was going up between 1990 and the mid-2000s, but between 2006 and the most recent data point, the share of foreign-born in the United States went up from a 12.5% to 13.5%, a startling increase, and certainly one that scares the nation. So really, it's no longer immigration that's driving us, demographic change. It's in fact the change in the youth population. What this shows you is the change in the youth population between 2000 and 2017 by race and ethnicity. The non-Hispanic white youth population actually fell by almost 7 million. Now, that does not mean that 7 million young white people died. Fox News would have reported on that and would have blamed it on Obama, for sure. What it means is that there's less white youth moving into 0 and 1 than moving into 19 and 20, so the net numbers are declining. You can see there's a small decrease in the African American population. Actually, most of that, if you look to the graph to the right, is because of black Americans marking themselves mixed race. But what's really driving the change is the youth population so well represented in this room. Big increase, more than 6 million in the young Latino population, about 1 million in the AAPI population. Big increase in people marking themselves mixed youth. So that change in the United States, going from the year 2000 to the year 2050, from about 69% non-Hispanic white to about 47% non-Hispanic white, that is majority people of color, that is exactly the demographic change that California went through between the years 1980 and 2000. California is America, just sooner. And in those 2 decades, there was tremendous tumult. Remember Prop 187, the elimination of bilingual education, the elimination of affirmative action, 3 strikes laws, etc. This kind of demographic diversity created for some demographic difference until people began to figure out how to do the kind of organizing in California to change the electorate and change the narrative. But this is going to happen in the rest of the country, because one of the things you'll notice if you look at that trend in California is that it's no longer the case that the demography is changing that much in California. When people hear that the United States will become majority people of color, what they imagine is that by the year 2050, California will become 150% Latino. Sort of super Chicanos marching the earth going, Aztlán y que la reconquista. We are back. But really it's going on in the rest of the country. And one of the things that's really helping to change and kind of create differences in our politics has to do with the age structure of the population. You can look here for some of the recent data for the median age, half older, half younger, of non-Hispanic whites. That median age is 43. For Asian Pacific Islanders, half older, half younger, 37. For Black Americans, African Americans, 34. Native Americans, 33. For Latinos, 28. So 43, 28, 15 years. It's a generation gap. It helps to explain our demographic change, because when you're 28, you're in prime family formation age. When you're 43, you think you're in prime family formation age. You may be. But it also helps to explain our politics, because an older generation is looking at a younger generation, not seeing itself in that generation, and not being willing to make the investments that are key for people to be able to succeed economically. Indeed, the state in the United States that has the biggest racial generation gap, that is the whitest old and the brownest young, is Arizona. With its fractious politics around immigration and ethnic studies into schools, and with the largest cuts until the recent teacher strike in K through 12 per student spending of any state in the United States. So part of the task of belonging is figuring out how do we build bridges between groups, how do we build bridges between generations, and part of what's kind of getting in the way, of course, is what's happened with the economy and the fact that so many of us on the left, on the progressive side of things, haven't got quite the right language to talk about these economic changes as well. So what's going on in the economy? First thing is that we know that the 1% is really running away from the rest of us. This shows you with the blue line. By the way, can you tell that I like graphs and charts? Yeah. So they are your friends. They are part of the data that we can use to make these kind of cases. But the 1% have really been running away from the rest of us, with the share of income going to the top 1% as high as it ever was in the United States during the Gilded Age, and certainly right before the Great Recession. Even beneath that, though, there's something going on for people not below the 1%, but in the sort of working population. That is this is for full-time year-round workers, and what's going on with that is that for those at the 90th percentile, 10% make more, 90% make less, what's gone on is that their wage incomes have gone up, while those who are at the bottom of the wage distribution, their incomes have actually gone down. And you can see the gray bars are the United States, the rust bars are California. California is actually, just like California was America fast forward on the demographic change, California has been America fast forward on the economic inequality that's resulted. Why has this gone on? There's 2 things to kind of keep in mind. One is that there's been an enormous shift in the returns to education. Now, many of you have parents who told you to go to school. and they said that if you went to school, you'd make more money. That is true. But what is interesting about what's gone on in the economy is now the education premium is even bigger than it was in the past. So looking at California, for people with less than a high school degree and people with a post-grad degree, in 1978, their wage gap was only $16 an hour. Now that gap has doubled to $32 an hour. Easy way to remember this, I'm a professor. I make a lot more money than professors ever made because I can speak a few languages, I'm computer literate, I can talk to crowds. My dad was a janitor. If my dad was alive, he would make a lot less money than janitors made when he was alive. So there's been an education premium, and we talk about that all the time, don't we? Here's the thing we leave out, which is that in the last 40 years in California, and this pretty much parallels the nation, worker productivity went up by 90%, while worker real wages flatlined. So it's not just what people tell you that if we got more educated, that we would repair the damage in the economy. We need to get more power to be able to curtail corporate influence over decision-making and move investments in the directions that we need. This, of course, has a big racial dynamic to it. This is the share of groups living below 150% of the poverty line. Again, just looking at California, I'll come back to white California in a minute. But you can see tremendous disparities between African Americans and Latinos compared to the non-Hispanic white population, and something that most people don't pay attention to, which is that the Asian Pacific Islander population actually has higher rates of poverty as well, because it's a pretty bifurcated community with some doing well, some doing not so well. Now, one of the things to realize is that this is not something, the demographic differences, that's simply a function of education. Even when you control for education, here looking at groups with less than a high school diploma, some college, an AA degree, a BA degree or higher, with the gray bars being white and all the other bars being various groups of color, you can see that at each and every level of income, what's true? People of color make less, whites make more. That's for 1990. Here's the weird thing. Maybe not weird. If you move to the current period, the gap not only still exists, it's actually gotten worse. Once you control for income levels or education levels, you see an even larger gap in the wages whites receive relative to the rest. So one of the things that we need to accept is that racism has been baked into our economic structure, and that if we are going to try to really address these issues, we have to understand and acknowledge the centrality of race in the economy. And there's a gender dynamic here as well. If you look at the share of workers making less than $15 an hour in the United States, again, for every ethnic group, women have a higher percent of women who are making less than $15 an hour. So what's the solution? Maybe socialism. She certainly seems like she'd be happy about it. But what I want to do is plant a couple of seeds about the way I think we need to sort of rethink our approach to the economy. First, we need to kind of reconceptualize work. Work is increasingly precarious, temporary, and part-time. I know this, not because of me, because I'm a professor and I have tenure, but I have a son who is an actor. I'm sorry, he's a musician and his backup career is as an actor. My daughter is an Uber driver. But for young people, work is increasingly precarious. People are going between jobs. It's very different. The other thing, I'm not going to go through all this, is unbelievably, what people don't understand is that work is increasingly caring. That doesn't mean that people care about workers. What it means is the following thing. When I tell you that there's going to be demographic change, what immediately pops to people's minds? Ethnic change, right? That's not the big change. In California, in the year 2010, 11% of the population was 65 years old or older. 2060, 26% of the population is going to be 65 years old or older. The big news is that we're aging. And as we age, we need to figure out how do we create family leave systems so people can take care of their elders, and how do we actually deliver high wages to the high-skilled people who provide labor for our elders. And I want to underline something here which I think is really important about the language we use, not just our economy, but how many of you, I never said anything about returns to skill. I talked about returns to education. Because here's the thing, how many of you have young kids? Okay, how many of you have elders that have some kind of care? Okay, now, would you like to put your kids and your elders in the hands of low-skill people? You don't. You know that that takes tremendous skill. You know that if you're a farm worker, that takes tremendous skill. You know that if you're a janitor and you're making a building clean like my dad did, that's a tremendous skill. We have to start talking about skilled work and the disconnection between skilled work and low wages for that work. That's really what we need to address. The second thing we need to understand is power in our economy. And we need to understand that power is going to be different right now for a couple of different reasons. One is that in the old days of the 19th century and the robber barons, you had monopolists who would actually corner a market by buying more and more of a replicative process. That is, they would buy more oil wells or they would buy more steel plants, and they would begin to corner the market that way. That is, it was really a strategy to create those kind of monopoly power. Right now, monopoly power is a feature of innovation. How many of you use a rideshare program? How many of you use a rideshare program not called Uber or Lyft? Okay, congratulations, 3 of you raised your hands, right? The way that these markets work right now is there's a big first mover advantage, and those groups wind up seizing lots of power, and they have lots of power over your data. And one of the things we need to be insisting on is a data dividend, in which the information that we're providing comes back to us in the form of a universal basic income. I talked about race. The other thing I think that we need to be understanding is that we need to really rethink the way economists do their work. For the most part, economists operate with the idea that people operate out of their self-interest. And if you're conservative, you think that markets will kind of, get that self-interest to yield a blissful outcome. If you're more left, you may wind up thinking that the state needs to tame that self-interest. What we need to understand, and I'll get to those questions in a minute, is that people also operate out of a sense of solidarity. And how do we encourage solidarity in our economy? Something I'll come back to. What I do want to say is that if we want to have a new framework for our economy, we need to think about the responses that took place during the last great economic crisis of the Great Depression. It had 3 central elements to it, the New Deal. One was figuring out how to grow the economy, Keynesian macro policy, and provide opportunity. A second was figuring out how to connect communities, something like the Tennessee Valley Authority, which allowed rural America to be part of the mainstream economy. And the third part of it was providing security for people through Social Security and unemployment insurance. Those are the kind of polls we need to come back to, but we need to change them for our era. Why? Because security is no longer based in companies, big companies like it was in the past. It needs to be society-wide. That means portable benefits. That means family leave policies. That means a whole series of things. Second, we need to understand, admit, and lift up that the New Deal was racist to its core. It was affirmative action for white people, as Guy Katz-Nelson talked about. And as a result, we can't do that again. We can't create a system of connecting people that excludes people. We need to connect everyone. And then finally, we can't grow like we did in the 30s. The way that we grow now is by learning to love the planet Earth and moving to a green economy. So we did a report called From Resistance to Renewal, a 12-step program for the California economy, with the idea being that California should recover from its addiction to inequality and racism. And I urge you to take a look at this. There's kind of 12 concrete steps that really point to what could happen in a more pragmatic way. But I hope that this was of some interest. I'll take some questions, and then I will deliver a stirring and emotional conclusion at the end. Great. Well, these are easy questions. So how do we build real multiracial alliances without losing the power of our community's unique experience and struggle? That's easy. How do we balance the work to win elections and to win real transformations in the long run? Another simple question. And what strategies did organizers in California use to transform toward greater equity? Whoosh. So let me answer that by talking about the California experience, where I think, and by the way, that is the book that I will be signing at 1 p.m., State of Resistance. It's a really good book. It's about to be made into a major motion picture. It's one of the reasons I wasn't here yesterday. I was negotiating the rights. I was going to be portrayed by Antonio Banderas. Turns out it's George Lopez, but it is a movie, so kind of excited about it happening. But when you think about the transformation in California, what I want to say is I think that there were sort of three kind of fundamental aspects to the transformation of politics in California that really get to the questions that were asked about multiracial analysis and the relationship between with electoral strategies. The first was kind of interesting, the development of making sure that movement politics could meet electoral politics. Now, this is partly because in the 1990s, many of us who were on the left, who were progressives, kind of got tired of losing. You know, many of us who are kind of progressive, we feel really proud when we lose, like we really stuck to our values. But we lost, right? And when we lost, people's lives were damaged. And as a result, people started saying, how do we actually transform and change the electorate? And the way that that happens is through something called integrated voter engagement. So that rather doing get out the vote, where what you do is you go at the time of elections and you grab the people who you know are already going to vote and you move them to vote, and the other side is doing exactly the same thing. You patiently work between elections to develop relationships with people so that when you call on them, you're calling on the new and occasional voters who could actually change the electorate. Now, the advantage of that, of having community organizing meet electoral politics, is that you can then also use people's active voting as a way to get them to go to demonstrations or city council meetings or planning commission meetings to do the real daily politics that makes a difference. The second thing I think that was kind of fundamental in California politics was beginning to practice the kind of thing that was being talked about here, intersectionality, that is understanding what our own struggles were for Latinos or immigrants or African Americans or LGBTQ folks, understanding intersectionality and beginning to use a rhetoric and a language that would seek to move the middle rather than move to the middle. So talking about the dream for dreamers, talking about marriage equality, seeking to move the middle rather than move to the middle, take a half measure. The other thing that I think was really important was the development of a geographic strategy. My shorthand for this is, there is not one more liberal voter in Berkeley. If someone is conservative in Berkeley, that person is determined and resistant to every social norm around them which tells them they're an oddity. Where we need to be organizing is in those places, and that's what Californians did, is to begin to organize in those parts of the United States and in those parts of California where there are people that you can move, where there are new and occasional voters you can animate. In the last election, for example, California in Orange County, the birthplace of the John Birch Society and all sorts of right-wing politics, went completely blue. Which is the first time that's happened since the dawn of man. So So one of the things that we need to realize is this kind of, change the electorate, move the middle, run everywhere. That's what Beto O'Rourke did in Texas. That's what Stacey Abrams did in Georgia. That's what and she won. That's what Andrew Gillum did in Florida. Those three elements, and that's what we need to do nationwide. Now, one last thing. We will, in order to get there, need to have we're going to need to have big hearts about welcoming everyone into the tent. We're going to need to have a hard head about tackling concentrated wealth and power and challenging racism and other dominations. But we're also going to have to learn to practice deep solidarity, and this is where I want to end. I was at a meeting a couple of years ago, and my good friend Gerald Lenoir, who's one of the founders of the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, had one of the best icebreakers for a meeting I'd ever heard of, participated in. He said, you should tell us something your mama told you. Like something your mother told you that really stuck with you. And it was like really beautiful. It was a group of people, it's about 30 people, about 25 African American. They were really kind of going through these great stories about what their mother told them about faith and education. And all I could think of was my mom, who grew up in Spanish Harlem, who spoke like a truck driver in both languages, right? When I was growing up, I did not know that coño y carajo were not words everybody used. For those of you who are Spanish challenged, there'll be translations later. So I kept racking my brain, but the one thing that kept coming back to me that my mom always said was, you never cross a picket line. You never cross a picket line. Now, she was a very labor-oriented person, and that's what she literally meant, but she meant more than that. She meant you don't cross someone else's struggle. When immigrants are speaking up around the issues of immigration, you do not cross that picket line. When our trans brothers and sisters are raising questions about transphobia, we do not cross that picket line. When African Americans and others are making us aware of the racist nature of our so-called criminal justice system, which should simply be called an incarceration system, we do not cross that picket line. We stand in solidarity. And if we understand that what was good enough for my mother is good enough for our struggle and is good enough for building our economy, we will make a change. Thank you.
I ask where home is, and I mean where is my mother. My mother is home. My mother is home, and I know my mother, but I still do not know where that is. And I've been told home is supposed to be a place of familiarity. And if so, then home is just a dream. It is somewhere between desperation and confusion. It is eating plantains in America. It is checking to see if the water is still on when the lights are off. Home is a pile of cardboard U-Haul boxes and an eviction notice. A nowhere that yells for me to come home before the street light comes on, but gives me no directions on how to get there. And I've been told home is supposed to be a place of safety. And if so, then home is just a dream. It is everything this body isn't. It is a bathroom stall. It is a universe only Octavia Butler could write us into.
Rainy season ain't came a while in my town. Oak been playing cut down, you know how? Folk tore natives out they on ground. Colonial craziness got the mind locked down since a baby fell from a cosmic spout to a place in list. Soul tracked down with some ink and pens, got a saw on fire. We need to just rip it, the tiny little piece, to find a bit of peace with a dragon and a beast on the mic and a beat. Hip hop only way we know how to get free. Rap rhythm had the ancients get in touch with me.
I surrender to you. Everything give to you, withholding nothing, withholding nothing, withholding nothing, withholding nothing. On day 7, I will resurrect the crooked smile of my city, dust off the Chuck outlines, wash off the weariness in tired eyes, and call in a generation of my people. Here in the Bay Area is where we belong. Thank you.
Thank you, Cece. These were wonderful young poets from You Speaks. Yeah, yeah, yes. So you just heard from Cece Gordon last on stage, and then Jada Imani was right here in the middle, dropping bars. And far to my left was, who did I miss? Tiana Bratcher, my favorite. That's Tiana Bratcher on that edge. They're young poets from You Speaks. You Speaks does work with 13 to 19-year-olds all over the Bay Area. I am a product of You Speaks and also one of the co-founders of the organization. The young people will be in some of these breakout sessions as well, so feel free to engage with them, and they'll be sharing longer works. We also heard from Dr. Pastor. Please give it up for Emmanuel. Nobody asked, but my mama told me, don't pack a bag I can't carry, don't wear shoes I can't run in. Facts serve me well, and always keep mad money on me. Rules. Lunch today will be provided, so after you go to your break and your breakout sessions, lunch will be back in this room from 12:30 to 1, from 12:30 to 1:30 rather. So come in here, break bread, dive deep with your new and your old friends. We also want to remind you to check out the whiteboard out in the hall for table discussions. They've been organized by all of you over the last 2.5 days. So make sure you check out those whiteboards and the comments and commentary there. I've already reminded you about the belonging bingo game. I don't know why I'm so into it. I'm just really into bingo. Sue me. I think that's all my announcements for you. We're going to go into a break right now, a brief 10-minute break, bio break. Do what you need for yourself, and then we're going to move into our breakout sessions right at 11. Thank you so much, Othering and Belonging. We're almost done, and I'm so sad. Othering and Belonging this afternoon. We love you. We love you. We love you. Love you. Love you. Love you.